Good day, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Military and Foreign Affairs Network. I am your host, the voice of reason. Today, we are continuing our ongoing coverage of the war between the Russian Federation and the Ukraine. Now, today's program is very important. The nature of the conflict is changing rapidly. The use of Russian GLONASS guided glide bombs are having an incredible impact on the course of the conflict, much more than what any media outlet in the world is reporting. Over the past 2 months, through the use and increased use of these guided glide munitions, the Russian military has brought the Ukrainian ground forces to its knees. We believe that some of the shakeups that we are now seeing in Kiev within the scope of the Zelensky regime, that the political insiders, those that are in the know in Kiev, fully understand what is happening on the front line and desire an immediate ceasefire. They understand, they that are in opposition to the not one step back strategy by Zelensky, they fully understand that because of the introduction of these glide bombs and the amount of glide bombs that are being used, and furthermore, the future-facing aspect of what's to come. The Russians, as we speak, are now in the final developmental stage of fielding new and bigger glide bombs. I've been often corrected on the channel by saying that the Russians do not field a Fab 3000, essentially a 3-ton glide munition. Yes, the Russians have fielded a 3-ton glide munition. It exists. Furthermore, again, the existing weapon systems, the Fab 250s, the Fab 500s, the Fab 1500s, these systems are seeing rapid improvements, quite literally month by month. We anticipate within the next 6 months to 1 year, the Russians could have in excess of 100 to a 200 kilometer standoff capability with its existing glide munitions. It's very important. But what's also important is the amount of glide weapons that are being used. The Russians are able to very easily strike up to 100 aim points per day. We have seen in just 1 week the Russians having the ability to strike 700 aim points with these glide munitions. In 90 days, 6 months, 1 year, it is believed that those aim point strikes in terms of numbers will vastly increase. Hence the issue within the political sphere of Kiev. They understand that this is going to change the war, and it's better to try and negotiate now versus facing a complete collapse of the Ukrainian military. Furthermore, in reference to the arms package, the $60 billion arms package that is being held up by the Republicans, it is understood that a conversation took place. It took place between leadership functionaries within the Kremlin and leadership within the White House, in the Pentagon. It is believed the Russians brought up the fact that the United States had used atomic weapons against Japan. It is believed during the course of this conversation, what was brought up is the fact that the United States was not being directly threatened by the Japanese at that time when atomic weapons were used. The reason the United States used atomic weapons against Japan was to prevent large-scale additional casualties from an all-out invasion of mainland Japan. That is why the United States used those nuclear weapons, which would be tactical nuclear weapons today. The Russians, therefore, tried to articulate if the same circumstance were to arise, meaning the West continues to give weapons to the Ukrainians, continues to directly assist the Ukrainians in this conflict, thereby causing large numbers of Russian casualties, both in the theater of conflict and inside Russia itself. Remember, Japan was never really able to launch operations inside the United States outside of the attack on Pearl Harbor. And what I mean by that is the continental United States. There was threats, possibly, that the Japanese could strike places in California, but that really never occurred. As we speak right now, the Ukrainians have attacked a multitude of sites inside the Russian Federation. So if you compare and contrast the red line that caused the United States to use nuclear weapons against the Japanese, and you look at what's happening right now in this ongoing war between Russia and Ukraine, it is not outside the realm of possibility that the Russians believe they are in the right to use tactical nuclear weapons against the Ukrainians. They're not there yet, meaning the Russians, in terms of using nuclear weapons. But there is a contingency plan. There is a contingency plan by the Russians to use nuclear weapons against the Ukrainians. And right now that is a big fear in the circles of power in the United States, that if the U.S. continues to hand over these weapon systems, causing large sums of casualties against Russian forces, the Russians may up the ante. And we see something like this in western Ukraine. Maybe it's a weapons depot. Who knows? But again, if you compare and contrast the use of the nuclear weapons against Japan and why the U.S. used those weapons, it was to prevent large numbers of U.S. casualties. And some would say this conflict that the Russians are facing right now, in terms of where it's located, is much more of a higher threat to the Russians than what the United States ever faced against the Japanese. Again, when you compare and contrast the idea that the Japanese could never really attack mainland United States versus what's happening now in this war, and especially with some of these Western weapon systems and indigenous weapon systems that the Ukrainians have, they have the ability to attack deep inside the Russian Federation. So there you have it. But again, the use of these glide weapons, as I started the episode, is having a massive impact on the course of this war. And you're starting to see that in Kiev as well. So that's where we set for today. More to come as we continue to watch what is happening. Feel free to comment in the comment section. As always, have a good day.